Welcome back to the Houston Oilers franchise. The Oilers have concluded season number 1 and honestly have exceeded all expectations. I came into this season 1 thinking that we were a 4 or 5 win team at best, but we have shown that we are pretty good, at least on offense. Defensively, maybe another story, but we ended up being competitive in almost every single game, and that may be just a side effect of Madden 24 this year. It's not easier, but I think, sometimes it feels like the CPU may keep you in games. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I've seen just a pattern across, a lot of different YouTube series that, a lot of YouTubers are also starting out with really good records. Like, it's not like overly difficult, and that's where sliders come into play, and that's where we use them. And we kind of use a mixture of Mat 10 sliders and some other sliders, and I think we found like a pretty good sweet spot, though we're still getting some pretty good results. So after a 9-8 regular season record, we missed the playoffs, but we do get the 11th pick in the draft. So there were just a lot of teams this season that were kind of lumped together, and it kind of ended up here where we are a above 500 team and still a top 15 pick. Antonio Gibson makes the Pro Bowl, and he is one of the only players on our team that makes the Pro Bowl. Looking at the rest of the Pro Bowlers across the league, I would say nobody defensively was really worthy, except maybe Chris Harris Jr., and we will take a look at him later, but he was second in the NFL in interceptions, but he still doesn't make it, so that kind of sucks. I was hoping that, he would make it there, but Tutu Atwell does make it as a kick returner. That's pretty surprising because he only ran back one kick during the season. So here is how we kind of finished here. We were 9-8. We were top 10 in offense and last in defense. That's just how it went this year. Patrick Mahomes wins MVP. Zach Taylor wins Coach of the Year. And looking at the rest of the awards here in the AFC, the Offensive Player of the Year goes to Lamar Jackson. Antonio Gibson actually finished third because of the amount of touchdowns he scored. I believe he scored 19 touchdowns collectively. Marvin Mims ended up just finishing behind Rashee Rice for Rookie of the Year. Remember, we looked at his stats at the end of the year last episode, and he ended up being a guy that was an 11 touchdown, 1,300-yard receiver, beating out Marvin Mims. But we did get an award winner from Antonio Gibson. He won Best Running Back, and mainly because, like I said, he was a running threat and a pass-catching threat as well. Von Miller wins Best Defensive Lineman. Best DB. Actually, Chris Harris Jr. finished second in Best DB, and it was only because Chidobe Awuzie led the league in interceptions, and then Jack Podlesny wins Kicker of the Year, Best Kicker. And we actually had some award winners. Like, as bad as our defense was, we ended up having one player in the top 2 in Best Defensive Player. We actually had Tyree Wilson, who finished top 5 in Defensive Rookie of the Year, even though I don't really think he deserved it. Like, he had a couple of spurts of games, and we will talk about that a little bit later as well. But overall, we were 32nd in yards allowed on defense. We were 5th in points scored on offense, 32nd in points allowed on defense, and then 5th in offensive yards. So we were just all over the place. Like, defensively, offensively, we were more consistent, but I could even chalk our great offensive numbers up to honestly having to keep up in games because we're giving up so many yards. We have to throw the ball a lot more. So I think that definitely inflated our stats. But looking at how we did defensively, I think this is the biggest issue going into the offseason. We actually did not give up a lot of rush yards, but it was the pass yards. Like, we were like almost dead last. I think we were dead last in pass yards allowed. We were bottom like 8 in sacks. We were tied for second in fumbles forced. I'm talking second to last. Like, we only forced one fumble the entire year. And then we were actually up there in interceptions. We were top 10 in interceptions with 15. And that was mostly credited to Chris Harris Jr., who had 6 by himself. So looking back at the season and just doing a recap here of our season, was bound to have growing pains. We knew he came in with the lower overall at about 64. He's gotten that up to 74, so a 10-point overall increase over his rookie season. He's also gained a motivation / player tag of quarterback of the future and day one starter, so he's actually doing pretty good. And also remember, he got that dev trait upgrade, so he's now at a star dev. Hopefully that can go to superstar one day. Case Keenum filled in as a backup, and he was really, in the expansion draft, my pick to be the mentor of this quarterback group, and lo and behold, he ends up playing, and actually playing pretty well. He started out as a starter throwing 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, then it started to tail off a little bit, but I'm going to give Case Keenum an attribute boost going into the offseason, so he signs with another team and maybe gets a shot to start somewhere. I think that he deserves it. Our best player on the probably entire team was Antonio Gibson, though. He started out hot, leading the league in rushing through the first 6 games. It kind of tapered off from there, but look at these runs. I mean, he was just a monster running the football. He eventually ended up finishing 6th in rushing yards in the NFL, but led the league in touchdowns with 19. And because of that, he gets a superstar dev upgrade, and he was an award winner, remember? I'm surprised they didn't give him the player tag of award winner, but maybe you only get that if you actually win like an MVP or rookie of the year or something like that. Maybe not best running back, but he does get that superstar dev upgrade for winning that award and finishing 1st in touchdowns. And he now starts to have these superstar abilities. We will kind of revisit this probably in training camp to see what we want to assign to him. But right now he has 2 abilities. I believe he unlocks the 3rd one at 85 overall. I could be wrong there, but happy to see our first superstar dev trait goes to Antonio Gibson. And also, remember, we extended him during the season, so he is locked up for the next 3 seasons. Other than him, we didn't have anybody who really rushed that well. DTR had 5 touchdowns on the ground. But our best receiver by far this year was Marvin Mims Jr., and we started to see him the last couple of games really start to ascend himself as that number 1 target. He was 2nd in Rookie of the Year voting, and we saw his speed on full display. Now, we had 2 upgrades for him that upgraded his speed 2 points this year. So he went up from I believe a 91 speed to a 93 speed, and I was so close to getting him that Rookie of the Year. Barashi Rice had an incredible year, but he still had a pretty good rookie year. 8 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, nothing to sneeze at. Robert Tonyan actually gets a development trait as well, and it's because after even missing 4 games on the season, he still led all tight ends in touchdowns, believe it or not, with 8. So that is an incredible feat. And remember, a lot of these guys are free agents after this year, so we're gonna have to try to re-sign everybody and bring them all back. Maybe not everybody, but Robert Tonyan is definitely on the list of guys to bring back. Now, let's talk about Kyle Phillips. He was an excellent number 3 receiver, and I think that's what he's going to be, the number 3 receiver. He finished with 770 yards, 5 touchdowns. He actually had some pretty explosive plays during the year, which was definitely surprising. I did not expect him to have any long touchdowns. He was definitely a short yardage guy coming into this series. Ends up having like 2 70-plus yard touchdowns on the season. I think we really struggled to find that number 2 guy, though. I think we saw flashes of Laviska Shenault, and also we saw flashes of Tutu Atwell, but then there was Sky Moore, who we thought was going to be the guy, but he ended up not working out, and I am definitely looking at trading him in the offseason. I think he has a lot of value. He's got a good overall at 76, and he's still only 22. I think he has a lot of value for some teams that are looking for a young receiver to help build that receiving core around, but I just don't think it's a fit here. Our offensive line was interesting this year. I think we had some good pieces, but no real consistency, and I would kind of chalk this offensive lineup as just average. Like, I mean, we don't have any high overall offensive linemen. I think this is definitely something we're going to have to address in the draft. And as you know, there's really no way to develop offensive linemen besides downs played and being a good running football team. I think that's pretty much it. So you really have to either sign high overall linemen or draft, linemen with very good dev traits so they just get XP a little bit quicker. But besides that, there are no training camp drills. There are no weekly training drills that are assigned offensive linemen. So you're kind of like at the mercy of kind of what your linemen are and then have to kind of work off of that. Our linebacker crew was led by Devin Bush, and I think that he had a very good season. He led the team in tackles. He was honestly like one of the bright spots, one of the few bright spots of the defense. And one thing that sets him apart from the others is that he is just super athletic. 88, 89 speed. He had 1.5 sacks. We weren't able to really blitz him as much as I would have wanted to because we needed him in coverage. We needed him at that second level. So we didn't really get to take advantage of, other opportunities to use him. Sidney Brown was interesting. I thought he had a decent rookie year. I think the one thing with him is that I needed more impact plays from him, and I just didn't get that. I think he will get another opportunity to show that he is our starter at safety, but I think maybe even a nickelback role would be more fitting for him. I guess we'll have to see how the future of how we use him goes, but it could change. Rushing the passer was definitely a huge problem for our defense. Christian Barmore led, and he was rushing as our rush D tackle. But one guy I was really disappointed in was rookie Tyree Wilson. Yes, it was his rookie year, but he had two sack games, then 2 1-sack games, totaling 6 sacks on the season. There was a string of games where he was just nowhere to be found. And a lot of his sacks came off of play actions where, there was a missed assignment and he went free to the quarterback. One thing I want to see with him is he needs to win one-on-one. And I want to say this right now. He has the most trade value on the team. That's all I'm going to say. But we'll see how the future of the Oilers with his career goes. Maybe our most disappointing player, in my opinion, was AJ Epinesa. I specifically noted during the expansion draft that I was excited for him. I saw a lot of him at Iowa. He played for the Bills, hasn't really popped too much for the Bills, and I thought that this could be a fresh start for him. And it just hasn't worked out that way. He also has the trade target player tag, so he is a guy that could be a candidate for trade in the offseason as well as we look to retool through the draft. But let's talk about maybe the best defender on the defense. It was veteran Chris Harris Jr., second in the NFL in interceptions with 6, and he had games where nobody could throw to his side. If you threw to his side, it could borderline be intercepted or some trouble could happen. He had 2 games with 2 interceptions, and this was the Indianapolis Colts game where he had 2. And even then, these are just smart plays. Here, he got beat on a slant, but he knew to stay home and look at the number 1 receiver who has been targeted a lot in that game and stay home on him, and he had an easy interception. In my opinion, Chris Harris Jr. is probably the most underrated defensive back in NFL history. He had a string in Denver where he was just the best slot corner in football, and a lot of cornerbacks said that he may have been the best cornerback in football at the time. I know Richard Sherman definitely mentioned it. And looking at this, he actually got a star dev upgrade because he was second in the league in picks. So I'm very happy and excited to bring him back. He's definitely going to be a guy that we prioritize to re-sign, especially since he has that mentor tag. It will help develop our young cornerbacks. Speaking of young cornerbacks, Bryce Hall is also due for a contract extension. I think I'm going to give it to him, but not as the number 1 cornerback. He will probably serve as a number 2. If he does not want to re-sign, then we're just going to have to let him walk. But I don't think he was dominant. He gave up a lot of big plays. He also made some good plays as well. He was second on the team with 3 interceptions, but nothing too special. One guy I wanted to see more out of, not in terms of his production, but just to see him play more games, is Eric Curley. We started him probably when we had maybe a third of the season left, and he started to make some plays. He actually got hurt one of the games in the last third of the season too, and it forced him to miss time, but he was really good. I have a little bit of, affinity for developing these undrafted guys and seeing where they go. And I like Eric Curley. Not saying that he's going to be the starter there, but he does show some flashes, throughout his rookie season he did. So let's look at stats throughout the league. And one thing I wanted to highlight is that DTR did not lead the league in interceptions. He was close to doing it. He was bottom 10 in interceptions. Antonio Gibson was up there in rush yards. We already know that. He was an award winner in the AFC Best Running Back, beating out Derrick Henry, who had 3 more rushing touchdowns than he did. Isaiah Pacheco also had 16 rushing touchdowns as well, but Gibson was just dynamic. He won that award, and he deserved it. Receiving-wise, I look at, who are the receiving leaders, and Marvin Mims Jr. wasn't far off from the lead. Like, he was actually close. Rashid Rice just had an excellent rookie season. Probably got that depth chart upgrade as well. But this is one thing I want to highlight. Von Miller had 27.5 sacks. He shattered the sack record. But we have nobody near getting double-digit sacks right now, and I think that's one step that I'm going to take in the offseason to find the next guy that can get us a double-digit sack season. I think it can change our defense, to be honest with you, at least having guys that can impact the game. So enough about the stats, and I want to talk about the NFL draft a little bit and just talk about the guys that we could be targeting here at the top of the first round and in the other rounds. And I'm going to see, what we can get. Like, I want to get as much talent as we can this first draft. So I'm going to be looking, like I said, to trade some players for draft picks and just load up on talent. It doesn't matter if it's first round talent. It could be second round, third round talent we're developing. But I want to start with the top defensive player in the draft. Now, this is Brian Page out of Ohio State, one of the more athletic cornerbacks. He leads the NCAA in interceptions. He is exceptional. A-man coverage, B-zone coverage, A-catching. He is just an elite level cornerback. If there's any quarterback you want in this draft, it's definitely him. But he does have a bit of an injury concern. He is a bit brittle. He does come in with D injury, so I am curious to see how he will hold up in the NFL. And obviously, availability is very, very important, but his ball skills are there. He's one of the best in the nation. He is the best in the nation, to be honest with you. And if there is a chance that we could trade up to get him, it's a possibility. I think everything is on the table this draft, but I do like some other cornerbacks in this middle round of the draft this year, and I think I want to target them as well. So anything could happen, but he is definitely the top defensive player in the entire draft. Now, a quarterback that was mocked to us was Brian Woodard early on in the season. Woodard is a dynamic playmaker, like he is a dual threat quarterback. And he has the arm to get it done at every level. Like, he can throw deep, he can throw short, he can throw medium, he can throw under pressure. And he knows where to go with the football. But his athleticism is really what sets him apart. I think that that's going to be his biggest trait as far as how he can win games. Like, he's not going to just beat you with his arm. He's going to beat you with his legs too. You got to watch out for everything. But if we're not looking at a first round quarterback, maybe a third, maybe a late second, fourth round, Nate Donovan's got to be on the list. He's from North Dakota State, so he doesn't have the experience of playing against major D1 football, but I don't think that truly matters with Donovan. He shows that he is a really good, I wouldn't even say project, like he has very elite skills right now. But the next guy I want to highlight, if we're looking at like the 9th, 8th, 7th ranked quarterback in this draft, and we're talking late in the draft, Logan Harrington out of Baylor is a prolific passer at the college level. Now, I think he may need some grooming at the NFL level, but if we're looking for a late quarterback, if we want to give DTR another year to develop and develop another young quarterback in this quarterback room, I think Harrington could be our guy. Harrington's going to be available late in this draft. I think he's going to fall, and he's got pretty good athleticism. You look at his ratings, he has B throw on the run, B throw under pressure, C awareness though, C medium accuracy, and he can be anywhere from A to C deep accuracy. And I think that's something that we could work with, but it's not something that I'm willing to reach on. But if he's there in the 4th round, we have 3 4th round picks in this draft. He could be one of those 4th round selections. The receiving room here in this NFL draft class number 1 really isn't deep at all. But one guy I do like is Derek Alexander, but all of the prospects look like this. Like, there are some F grades for a lot of top receivers in this class. He has good speed, not elite speed, but good speed, but he is a good short route runner. I do want to add to the receiving room in this draft, but I don't necessarily need to draft a number one receiver. I think I love what we have with Marvin Mims. I just want to add to the depth. But I do want to add another tight end because, as you saw during the season, Bob Tonyan is getting older and he could be a little less durable than his younger years. And I think that Kyle Ford out of Clemson is an option. I think Callum McDermott I really, really like as a mid-rounder. Like I said, that 4th round selection. He's pretty good athletically, but this is what I like about him. A, awareness, A, catching traffic, A, spectacular catch. Like, he's going to be a really good pass catcher. He doesn't necessarily need the separation, and he's also a good blocker. Like, honestly, he could be like Bob Tonyan is right now. So that's a guy I want to look at. So the offensive linemen in this draft are very plentiful. Like, this is a deep tackle draft. So I think that, in the first 2 rounds, I'm going to be looking at drafting a tackle. So either we're going to try to acquire another 2nd round pick or another 1st round pick and get a tackle. But I think tackle is going to be where we're going to go at some point early in the draft. I think our offensive line was shaky, and I definitely want to add a young guy there. We already saw Chris Blackburn. He is one of the best pass rushers in the country, along with this guy, Eric Choice. Both of these guys are considered the top pass rushers as far as edge rushers in this draft. And I really, really like Eric Choice. Now, I'm going to need some film on him. I need to really dig into that. But he has A, finesse moves, B, block shedding, and A, awareness. And the awareness is actually pretty important because I want a guy that actually can recognize plays. I think that's one thing that Tyree Wilson struggles at. Like, sometimes I think that he's just like not aware of what's going on. So I definitely want to, get a guy that has high awareness. Earlier in this season, we highlighted that Bobby Ford had a draft story attached to him, that he was a former MMA boxer. Now, one thing with him is that he is very, very good with his finesse, not the most athletic, but I could be looking to at least get another pass rusher to develop next to Tyree Wilson if we decide to keep him in the offseason. Now, moving over to cornerback, because cornerback is going to be a big question mark, especially if Bryce Hall does not sign. We could double down, maybe even triple down on quarterback. Reggie Anderson is an interesting choice. Now, one thing that he does not do is that he does not find the ball in the air very well. It's one of his traits. So he is an early projected cornerback, 2nd to 3rd. But as I look down the board, I think the number 2 cornerback in this draft is actually ranked as the number 7 quarterback in this draft here on this board. He is a round 3 to 4 projection. It is Casey Burton out of Penn State. This kid is excellent. His player notes say that he is an aggressive ball hawk, has a great motor, and he is very disciplined flag wise. Like, you're not going to see any pass interference. Also, he is 6'2", and he can run like a gazelle. Like, he is fast. Like, there is no getting away from him. And I think that this is one thing that I love about him. Like, he is not going to let people burn him. And I think this guy has the potential to be an elite number 1 cornerback. He has great to elite speed, good to great acceleration. But look at his attributes. A, catching, B, man, B, zone, B, block shedding, actually, to get, tackles on the edge. And then he has B to C injuries. So if that ends up being a B injury, we could be looking at a durable cornerback who could, be the back end of the defense for a lot of years to come in this series. Now, finally, at the safety position, like I just highlighted, I want to give Sidney Brown an opportunity to show what he can do again. And I do like, our undrafted players as well. But it's definitely going to be something I'm going to be looking at. It's not a very high depth safety class, but we're going to see what we can get probably late in this draft at safety. But here's what the latest mock draft looks like. Now, this was from week 8 or something like that. Like, this is kind of dated. And they had us mocked to get Casey Burton in the 1st round. I don't necessarily know if we're going to go after him in the 1st round. I don't think he's going to go there anyway. So I'm going to see what happens in the draft and kind of play it from there and kind of play off of, what every team is going after. The final thing in this recap episode is I want to fire our defensive coordinator. I want to bring in somebody else, which we will bring him in next episode during the offseason and figure our defense out. To be honest with you, like, we just need help on defense, and I'd rather spend these stat points on developing defensive players. So I'm going to save those stat points that you see at the top. I have 66, which is good for about 3 upgrades or so. So I'm going to save that for our next defensive coordinator, whoever it ends up being. But I am excited for the offseason. I'm excited to add some pieces that will help this defense. Our offense also needs help. It's mostly on the offensive line and a receiver more than likely. And we also need a tight end. So, I mean, we have, holes on offense too. But I would say that defense is definitely the priority going into the offseason. But I think we had a really good season, 9-8. Better record than the Chargers and the Broncos in the AFC West. And I'm excited to build this team up. So hit subscribe, hit that like button. Hope you guys enjoyed season 1. The offseason's coming next. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still trying to fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on.